Fellas, we saw a lot of UFC featherweights compete at UFC 300. Some to mention, obviously, Max Holloway in the main event, Aljamain Sterling, Calvin Kattar. We had Sadik, Yusuff, Diego Lopez, and I think it's the perfect time to matchmake pretty much everyone in the rankings of the featherweight division. I'm going to be going through the entire rankings from top 15 all the way to the title area and matchmaking nearly every single fighter in the rankings for fighters that just make sense and that need to be made in this division. So let me know your thoughts on these matchups. I think I've made some pretty good matchups here. Starting off with a title fight, I'm going to shine over this because I've talked about this a lot recently, but Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria. Yeah, this in my opinion needs to be the next fight in the featherweight division. This would be huge. I mean, first of all, it's the battle of the boxers. You ask someone who's the best boxer in the UFC, they're either going to say Max Holloway or Ilia Topuria. What better way to find out than matching them up against each other obviously in a UFC main event? This would be absolutely hype. Two of them, two massive stars. I mean, Ilia Topuria, you've seen ever since he's won the belt, he's been carrying it around. He's had paparazzi all over him. He's been to all these big, big events. Topuria is practically a superstar now that he's knocked out Volkanovski. And Max Holloway, after that performance against Justin Gaethje, undoubtedly one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Both of them coming off flash knockouts recently, and I don't think anyone expected them to do that in their fights either, so Topuria versus Holloway for the featherweight belt. Finally a chance for Holloway to potentially get the belt without having to go through Alexander Volkanovski, and it's a very, very credible defense if Topuria can defend against Holloway. To win the belt against Volkanovski and defend against Holloway would be one thing for Ilia Topuria, so that's the matchup that I've got. Holloway versus Topuria, cracking fight, massive main event, and I think this would be an absolute banger. And the thing I love most about this matchup as well is that it's 50-50. There's not an obvious answer. You can ask 10 people who's going to win this fight. I can guarantee 5 of them will say Topuria, 5 of them will say Holloway, because it's just that even of a matchup. Needs to happen. Hope this is the next title fight in the featherweight division. I know Holloway's got a lot of options, but I'd just love to see this fight. They've already been talking on Twitter as well, so yeah, Holloway versus Topuria for the featherweight belt. I think that should be next. Then we've got the #1 contender fight of the division. The winner of this matchup should definitely get a title shot in their next fight, and it's between Brian Ortega and Movsar Evloev. Now, I know in my UFC 300 matchmaking video, I matched Brian Ortega against Aljamain Sterling, but don't worry, I've already got a better matchup for him in this video. But yeah, Brian Ortega versus Movsar Evloev. I think this is a chance for Movsar Evloev to get one more win before he gets a title shot, and potentially in interesting fashion. We're not giving Movsar Evloev another striker for him to lay on for 25 minutes or 15 minutes. We're giving him a fight that's dangerous. Ortega is a dangerous grappler. We just saw him submit Yaya Rodriguez and get a massive upset on that UFC Mexico card. Brian Ortega's bread and butter is his dangerous jiu-jitsu. He can also hang on the feet. He's not a great striker, but he can also hang on the feet. But his main bread and butter is his jiu-jitsu, which is why it's a difficult fight for Movsar Evloev, because Evloev loves to lay and pray. And I'm not sure he's going to want to lay and pray with a guy like Brian Ortega. He could do it, but yeah, I think maybe if their grappling cancels out, he could be a decent fight on the feet. But I think it's going to be a grappler versus a grappler, potentially a fun fight for Evloev. And I think they're both one more big win away. I don't think Ortega deserves a title shot just yet, but he's definitely back in the talks after beating Yaya Rodriguez, and beating a guy like Evloev who's undefeated to be the perfect fight to do that. And Evloev is coming off a not really an impressive win over Arnold, Alain, because I'm not sure people are happy about that fight. So give him Ortega coming off a win, and if he can beat Ortega, fair enough, give Evloev his title shot. In my opinion, this should be the #1 contender fight, potentially a fight night main event. Yeah, Ortega versus Evloev, decent fight. I would not mind seeing this fight next at all. And then the next fight, this is also kind of a #1 contender fight, but you'll see why. And it's Aljamain Sterling versus Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski is one of our favourite fighters, and I just can't bear to watch Alexander Volkanovski end up in a highlight reel. I don't want to see this guy get knocked out again, which is why I've matched him up against Aljamain Sterling. It's a CTE-free matchup. He's not going to take any damage on the feet. There's no threat of getting knocked out. There's no threat of even getting knocked down or caught significantly on the feet. In fact, on the feet, this should be an easy fight for Volkanovski. He would destroy Aljamain Sterling on the feet, but we said the same thing about Calvin Kattar, and he ended up getting ragdolled for 15 minutes straight. It wasn't the most interesting fight, but it happened, and Volkanovski's wrestling is much better than Calvin Kattar's, which is why it's a difficult fight for Aljamain Sterling. You've also got the storyline of a former bantamweight champion versus former bantamweight champion versus a former featherweight champion. Two big names. A year ago from now, they were both a champion, so You've got that whole aspect of it. Quite weird to see them fighting each other when it's not for a belt. But yeah, if Sterling can beat Volkanovski, without a doubt, let him jump the queue and fight for the belt next, above Evloev and Ortega. And if Volkanovski can beat Sterling, he's had some time off. He's had a fairly, I assume it's going to be a CT-free win over Aljamain Sterling. Finally, Volkanovski, one last crack, maybe one more fight, give him a title shot against either Holloway or Topuria, and I think this is kind of another one of those #1 contender fights that makes the most sense. Yeah, big fight there, potential non-title fight, pay-per-view main event, who knows, if not a co-main event, but yeah, Volkanovski versus Sterling, I do not mind that matchup at all, and I think that should be the next fight in the bantamweight division, and featherweight division, and it also, there's no way that's a boring fight. Volkanovski is not going to let that be a boring fight, so Sterling, Volkanovski, I want to see that. The next fight I've got, this would be an absolute banger. You've got Josh Emmett and Arnold Allen. This is one of those matchups that's either going to end in a brutal war. It's just going to be back and forth, you know, back to the samurai days. Both of them just taking each other on in an absolute bloodbath to a decision, like we saw with Topuria and Emmett. Or it's going to end in a brutal knockout. We just saw Josh Emmett. I mean, he's the hardest hitter at 145. Brutally, and emphasis on the brutally, knocked out Bryce Mitchell. And Arnold Allen has pop in his hands as well. We saw the way he finished Dan Hooker so effortlessly, and he can crack. Both of these guys come to scrap every single fight. It would be a bloodbath, and this is 100%, no matter what card you stick it on, it will be the fight of the night. I hope we see this matchup on maybe the UFC Manchester card. UFC are going to Manchester in July, so hopefully they can have Arnold Allen versus Josh Emmett on there. Yeah, either a brutal finish or a bloodbath guaranteed. If Arnold Allen can beat a guy in Josh Emmett, that pushes him straight back into title contention, because his 2 losses aren't that bad. He lost to Holloway, who's arguably the best in the division right now, and Evloev, which was quite a controversial loss. And Josh Emmett is lost to a couple of the guys at the top, but he's coming off a brutal knockout win. So if he can beat Arnold Allen, who's still one of the best, push him straight into the contendership. Maybe the winner of this gets a #1 contender fight. I'm not sure. But yeah, Josh Emmett Allen needs to happen, and I hope we see this fight as soon as possible. The next fight is again another fun striking matchup. Yaya Rodriguez versus Giga Chikadze. People have been talking about this matchup for the past few years. It's kind of been one of those fantasy matchups in the featherweight division, but we've never really got to see it. And I feel like now's the perfect time. Yaya Rodriguez, he got demolished by Alexander Volkanovski. He got submitted when no one was expecting him to get submitted when he fought Brian Ortega. He's on a losing streak now. Let's give him Giga Chikadze. Giga Chikadze, he's been wanting to fight Yaya Rodriguez for a while, and to be honest, I do not mind this matchup at all. It's a fun kickboxing fight in the featherweight division. The winner of this fight can get pushed straight back into the top 5 area of the featherweight division. I know Yaya Rodriguez already is, but he's not going to be fighting in the top 5 featherweights anytime soon. So Giga Chikadze, Yaya Rodriguez, really fun kickboxing matchup. But like I said, a potential fight night main event in this. Yeah, fun matchup. Not a big threat. It's quite a favourable matchup for both of them as well. Winner, push them back in the top 5. Rodriguez, Giga Chikadze. Let's see that fight next. The next fight, again, I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I did talk about him on my UFC 300 matchmaking video, but it's Calvin Kattar versus Diego Lopez. Now, Diego Lopez is a rising star. I mean, he just came off a flash knockout over Sadik Yusuff, which is extremely impressive. I don't want to see him jumping over the rankings and getting an immediate rematch with Evloev or anything like that. I think he needs to work his way through the rankings, and I feel like Calvin Kattar is the perfect guy to do that. Calvin Kattar is still a dangerous guy on the feet. He's still one of the best boxers in the featherweight division, but his past few fights haven't been amazing. He got injured against Arnold Allen. He obviously got quite a controversial loss to Josh Emmett. And then in his last fight, he got dominated by Aljamain Sterling. I don't think Calvin Kattar, with all due respect, he doesn't really deserve to fight at the top level of featherweight anymore until he gets a good win. And I feel like Diego Lopez is that win for him to get back in the top area of the featherweight division. But for Diego Lopez, if he can go out there and beat a guy like Calvin Kattar, fair enough. Throw Diego Lopez in the top 5. Give him a contendership matchup. You know, give him one of the big guys, the top dogs in the featherweight division. And I will be extremely excited for that. It's either going to be Calvin Kattar boxing the head off boxing the head off Diego Lopez, or it's going to be Diego Lopez getting another flash knockout over Calvin Kattar and pushing himself through those rankings. So this needs to happen. Stick it on a pay-per-view. Calvin Kattar versus Diego Lopez. I think that's a great fight next for the featherweight division. And then the final fight. This is a bit of an odd fight because because it kind of relies on how a different fight plays out. But it's Sadik Yusuff versus Lerone Murphy. Now, obviously, Lerone Murphy's matched up against Edson Barboza. So I think if Lerone Murphy loses to Edson Barboza, then we can do Lerone Murphy versus Sadik Yusuff. I mean, first of all, if Lerone Murphy does lose, both of these guys would have lost to Edson Barboza. I think the winner of this can stay in the rankings as well. I'm not sure how longer Sadik Yusuff's going to be in the rankings. I mean, he's lost to Edson Barboza, then goes and gets knocked out against Diego Lopez. And Lerone Murphy, undefeated, had a pretty good run outside of the rankings, and now he's getting a big step up in competition. But if he loses, it's a good fight. Again, another CTE-free matchup for Sadik Yusuff. He's just been brutally knocked out. He's faced two dangerous strikers, and now we're giving him a more technical grappler. You know, there's no way Lerone Murphy's giving this guy CTE. And for Lerone Murphy, again, if he loses to Edson Barboza, it's still a difficult matchup in the rankings, and if he was to beat Sadik Yusuff, it keeps him in the rankings, but you know, it's not like an Edson Barboza level fight. So Sadik Yusuff versus Lerone Murphy, if he loses to Barboza, that could be a good fight. Winner gets to stay in the rankings. But yeah, those are my matchups for the UFC featherweight division. I think a lot of these need to happen. There's a lot of fights that need to be made in the featherweight division, so let me know your thoughts on these matchups. Do you have any better matchups? Let me know. Thank you for watching.